very good evening and welcome. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. The prices of a majority of food items have been on an upward trajectory since the past few months. Yes, we've been talking about tomatoes, but it's gone way beyond tomatoes. The prices of other staples, vegetables too, have been shooting up. The inflation pinch has moved from the common man's household, whose cost of a vegetarian thali has shot up by almost 30% to even global food chains. So you know that tomatoes went missing from McDonald's burgers some weeks ago. Now, Subway sandwiches will no longer come with a free slice of cheese. Domino's Pizza too has flagged concerns over rising prices of dairy products, which may ultimately affect the final price of the consumers. And also very concerning, your cup of coffee might become more expensive as the prices of the beans have been going up. So why are we seeing this fresh bout of price rise? Incessant rains is one major reason. This has been going on in July in major growing areas, and the kind of rains that inundated fields and damaged standing crops. This has affected vegetable supplies in urban and semi-urban areas. The government has been responding over the last couple of days, and even today we have been seeing a lot of announcement. The centre has announced that it will start releasing stocks of onion from state-owned reserves. This happened today. So that is because, at least in the case of onions, there are enough buffer reserves. It's not that much of a perishable like tomatoes. So the government is trying to come in on onions. A number of kitchen staples will also be imported. The rising price of rice, wheat and pulses has to be handled, and we are seeing the government saying that they will take steps to check these prices of sugar as well, looking at the festive season coming up. But are these measures enough to tame this giant called inflation? Are we going to see this persist, or is this just a temporary blip? We're talking about all of that on the show, but first let's take a look at this report.
On the front of inflation, it clearly seems that the government is at the defensive position. Government is taking back-to-back steps so as to ensure that the prices of essential commodities, it remains under control, and also the availability is maintained in the market. And the latest move is regarding the sugar. The government has released an advisory to the sugar mill owners that they have to sell minimum 90% of the monthly quota that is being released to them. And if failing so, some disciplinary action might be taken against these sugar mill owners. So this advisory has been released last night, and this advisory also indicate the fact that there has been input that the government has been receiving, that there are traders, those who are indulged in hoarding practices, that they are artificially holding the sugar stock, and they are anticipating that seeking the upcoming festive season, the prices of sugar might escalate. Seeking the same, the government has came up with this advisory. But if we go by the numbers, the Sugar Mill Association ISMA has came up with the preliminary data that suggests that the production of sugar for the ongoing sugar season, that is October 2022 till September 2023, the sugar production is around 362 lakh metric ton, whereas the ethanol diversion will be somewhere around 45 lakh metric ton, and the available sugar will be somewhere around 317 lakh metric ton, whereas the domestic consumption stands, the estimate suggests that it will be 275 lakh metric ton, and this indicates that the government will be having enough stock of 45 lakh metric ton, and that is the reason that government is confident and has been echoing that the prices of sugar will be under control, especially during the upcoming festive season. The consumers won't have to face the heat of the rise in sugar prices. But there are inputs, as I have mentioned, that the traders are indulged in hoarding practices, and so as to check these sort of illegal activity, the government has released the advisory, and government has been constantly saying that the sugar availability in the market and the prices will remain under control.
As on date, sir, NCCF has distributed 8,84,612 kgs of tomatoes in Rajasthan, Delhi, NCR and Uttar Pradesh, and this will continue in the coming days, and this will be increased also. Also, through the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, Delhi NCR region citizens can procure tomatoes. Already prices in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, the wholesale mandis of tomato has started coming down below 100 rupees, and we expect this to also help us. As of today, sir, we have booked tomatoes from Kolar Mandi and coming to Delhi. And this will be coming at 85 rupees per kg. Also, the wholesale price in Andhra Pradesh, as I said, has already started coming below 100. We have also initiated imports from Nepal by removing the import restrictions, and the first lot of tomatoes from Nepal are likely to reach Varanasi, Lucknow, Kanpur by Friday itself. NCCF is planning a mega sale of tomatoes in Delhi NCR region at a subsidized rate of 70 rupees this weekend and covering all the nooks and corners of Delhi.
Now, with rising prices of rice, wheat and pulses, the government is taking a lot of measures. That's the report that you heard from Sameer Dikshit. The question is this going to be enough? How long will this go on? Devinder Sharma, Food Policy Analyst, is with me on the show. I'm also speaking with Siddharth Sanyal, Chief Economist at Bandhan Bank this evening. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us on the India Development Debate. Mr. Sanyal, let me begin with your take of this. I can't even say a fresh inflation wave. It's more of a continuing inflation wave, especially with food prices. What do you see are the primary concerns and reasons?
Absolutely. I think it needs to be recognized that inflation internals are moving in many different tracks at the moment. So some of the prices, like vegetable prices in particular and food prices in general, are rising. But if you see some of the other prices, energy prices are definitely not moving in that direction. Also, some of the other industrial commodity prices are not moving in that direction. So for that matter, compared to a 4.8% inflation, CPI inflation for June, the current upcoming print should be in the vicinity of 6.5%. So good 170 basis point kind of uptick in the CPI number in 1 month, if I look at the CPI number. But if I look at the WPI number, there we actually see the number still remain in the negative zone. That means compared to last July, this July overall index will be lower. So that's I think a very, very interesting trend. I didn't want to miss that particular thing to highlight. But having said that, the spiraling prices on the food price part is always worrisome. They have the potential at times to get spillover into some of the other buckets and get generalized, and no government can at any point in time can take it easily.
Absolutely. Just to follow up there, Mr. Sanyal, because it's expected that the July inflation print, the CPI print, is going to top 6%. Some estimates are going as high as 6.4%. To put that into context, June was about 4.8%, and we were very happy that we're seeing, inflation cool off. Do you see that as a persisting issue, and do you have any figure in mind for the July print?
Is it for me?
Yes, Mr. Sanyal, follow up for you.
We do expect it in the vicinity of 6.5%, maybe potentially marginally higher than 6.5%. But having said that, almost the entire contribution is coming from food prices and mostly from vegetable prices, not so much from any other segment. So if we are talking about something like 170 to 180 basis point kind of movement from that 4.80 kind of a level, we do think out of that 180 odd basis point movement, something like 150 basis point will be coming from food prices alone.
All right, let me come to you now, Mr. Sharma. What do you see as the reasons for this upset? At least for onions, the heavy rains in July seem to have played spoil sport. Is there something we could have done in terms of policy to protect crops from these kind of rains? This is the monsoon season. It was expected first to be a shortfall of rain. We saw very heavy rains in July, incessant rains in some regions, less rains in some. What could have been done? Can we now prepare ourselves for better for such vagaries of the monsoon?
Well, I'd like to add two things here. First of all, as was just said, that the wholesale price inflation has been in the negative. And that clearly tells us that the farmers haven't got anything out of this price rise that the consumers are facing. And secondly, I think more importantly, we all know that unseasonal rains and heavy rains have been a disruptor. and that is the reason why the prices have gone up. And this is a factor which, of course, you can't do anything. Let me tell you, you may be as alert as anybody, but there is not much that we can do when the weather behaves very erratically, and this time it has. So let's be very clear that this price rise was essentially because of the retail trade making a fast buck, and maybe they have reasons, but that is a factor that we must accept. And secondly, it is also very clear that this trend is not going to last for long, and we will see the prices cooling down in the days to come. The government, I think, has never been supportive of farmers when they are suffering. It's only the consumers, when the prices go up, that the government steps in, and we see the kind of panic reaction or the kind of response that the government is coming up is only to help the consumers. But I wonder, where were they for last 6 months when the prices were, at so low that farmers were forced to throw their produce onto the streets? For 6 months, nobody came to the rescue of farmers. Isn't farmer also a consumer? Why is it that the government only wakes up when the consumers have to feel the pinch, and never when the farmers suffer? And that is one reason why the tomato prices went up this year, because most of the farmers had given up, realizing for last 5 months they didn't get a better price of 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 4 rupees per kilo. And so they decided to give up. And that is the reason we had this kind of a shortfall, which normally would happen in that season. But this time, the price rise was very high, an indicator that farmers were not getting active as far as the tomato crop was concerned. But now, looking at the other crops also, why is it that whenever the crop is getting ready for the market, the government steps in with imports? In June, the government had announced they're going to import 12 lakh tons of tur-dal, and that was 35% higher than that, and hoping that the prices will come down. This is exactly what had happened last year when the wheat prices were going up. The government, made open market releases to bring down the prices. Now, what happens to the farmers in the bargain is something I think we all have to realize and consider, and also take up.
So, Sharma, just coming back to the point you're making. Just coming back to the point you're making, you're saying that with these prices going up, it's not as if farmers are benefiting either.
Yes, that's what, if I look at the data that has been placed, it clearly mentions that the retail prices have gone up. The consumer price index they talked about is jumping to 6% plus, but the wholesale price, there's a huge gap between wholesale price and the consumer price. So I think it is quite clear that when it comes to farmers, they haven't got the benefit out of it, except for this year. I must say that tomato was an exceptional season when farmers did earn a kind of a price that they should have accepted or expected normally to prevail at this particular time.
Okay. That brings me back to the question of policy intervention. And Siddharth Sanyal, you said that no government can really ignore what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing as policy intervention, the finance minister also spoke about it in Parliament. In fact, there are steps being taken to control the prices of onion, sugar, wheat, pulses, of course, tomatoes. But is this enough? This seems to be a sort of reaction where you plug the holes in a boat when it's sprung the leak. Could something have been done? Because this is something we see year after year. Sometimes it's tomatoes, sometimes it's wheat. It's one thing or the other.
Yes, absolutely. I think the taking recourse to intelligent imports, I think it's a very good near-term intervention that can offer some kind of immediate relief to prices. But I think the broader policy prescription has to move around creating some kind of more robust rural and agro infrastructure. Specifically, I want to highlight the point around improvement of agro storage and rural storage in general. So over the last about a decade or so, there had been very significant improvement in rural electrification. A very natural corollary to that is to strengthen the network of agricultural storage or rural storage that can actually provide some kind of a very structural cushion or buffer against this kind of volatility in prices. So I think that is something. There has been a significant initiative on the part of government and other private initiative entrepreneurs also around that. But we need to see the benefits of that in a bigger scale over the course of the next few years. That can provide a very, very significant, as I mentioned very clearly, structural cushion to this particular problem in a very significant way. There are some of the other points like improving the agro marketing part also, that as my previous speaker had been saying, that not necessarily the entire burden that is borne by the consumers go in the hands of farmers or producers, often eaten up by middlemen. I think with strengthening of agricultural marketing as well as agro storage, that distribution will also be addressed in a very, very beneficial way. That's why both these points are very important in my view on a long-term basis.
You know, Mr. Sharma, just on the policy point of it, and you're absolutely right when you say that the focus is always on the consumer and consumer prices, but farmers are also consumers. So we have a situation where consumers are suffering, farmers are suffering, the government is scrambling now to fix the situation. What do you think is the policy solution? One measure which was suggested a few years ago was the farm laws, which of course turned into a big disaster and then had to be scrapped, repealed, etc. But is there a system in place that we can bring to make sure that all stakeholders at the end of the day are protected?
Well, first of all, about the farm laws, I'm glad the farm laws were withdrawn. Otherwise, agriculture would have been in terrible, terrible distress, as is evident all over the world. And now, having said that, I think let's be very, very clear that we need definitely policy interventions. Now, one policy intervention which I can see, which is not being attempted, is why do we have to depend on imports from Africa and so on as far as the dals are concerned? Why can't we increase procurement of dals within the country? Let's look into the summer moong. The moong season has just ended, and the government had capped, in Haryana, for instance, we know the government had capped the moong procurement to about 3 quintals, and that means a farmer cannot sell more moong. Now, and then he has to dispose it off in the market. The market is, of course, giving him a less price. So I think this is a kind of a mismatch which has to be taken care of, and the government has to ensure that there is more procurement happening for crops which are in short supply within the country. And this is possible because it is not a dearth of or shortfall in crop production in India. It is primarily because we don't procure. We don't procure enough, and then of course we can always blame, we need to import more because the prices are going up. I think this has to change. The B part is, yes, we need infrastructure. But also, let's be very clear that infrastructure, when we talk of, let's say, onions, we can, a lot of people I hear would say that there is a need for setting up more storage, but enough storage is already there for onion in the country. Why did the prices didn't take off in the last 4 months as far as onion was concerned? So we have to understand the reasons for it and then come and support the farmers. Unfortunately, there is no support for the farmer. And for the record, let me place it here that the OECD report which said that between 2010 and 2016, farmers in India lost 45 lakh crores. This is an OECD report. I didn't see any industry or assembly or parliament or an academia discussing this. Nobody wanted to talk about the loss that the farmers have suffered. This may be because of a lack of infrastructure, a lack of adequate pricing being given to farmers, but whatever it is, the nation didn't discuss. It didn't even bother what is happening to farmers. Yeah. The point I'm trying to make is, yes, it needs more attention to focus on how to reduce the bloodbath on the farm. That is the most important issue. And I think that is where we need to draw the attention of the industry also, as far as the policies are concerned. And I'm glad the laws were withdrawn, because otherwise one law, which is quite evident, is because, it allowed the hoarding to go on. And if that had continued, look at it, over the last few months, we have always been talking about, fixing up a stock limit. Why? Because the industry does hoard, and we know that. So I think let's be very clear. We need definite.
We need deeper solutions. I think the long and short of it is we need deeper solutions, not reactions when the crisis already comes. We need to find a way to be able to predict which staple or which commodity is going to see some kind of pressure, and that is definitely a work in progress. But on the other hand, the inflation pain seems like it will last for some time. Let's wait and see what the July CPI print looks like. Thank you to both of you for joining us on the show today. We'll take a very short break on the India development debate, but a lot more coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.